Welcome to Portsmouth This Week. It's January 30th. We are welcoming today Dr. Tom Kenworthy, the Assistant Superintendent of Schools for Portsmouth. But first, we need to do some trash talking. This is Project Purple Week. We had it on the show last week, and we are both in a dodgeball tournament at 6:30 this evening at the high school.
Yes, we are.
It will have happened, and do we have a little wager on the table? Maybe
Sure.
a penny, a ceremonial penny?
Penny, nickel, whatever you want to do.
I am playing for the Prevention Coalition. Dr. Kenworthy is playing for the administration team, so we'll see who wins.
Yes, we will.
Tom, thanks for coming today, and welcome back.
Thank you.
I am guest hosting for Doug Smith, and I'll try to do a worthy job. Today's topic is Common Core state standards and the assessments. And obviously, a lot has been written about the Common Core state standards. A lot has been kind of in the news about assessments. So why don't we get started, and people are having, I think, a hard time understanding what Common Core state standards are,
Sure.
what they aren't. And I'm wondering if you can give the citizens basically a general overview of the Common Core state standards.
Sure. So the Common Core state standards are essentially a set of standards that guide our curriculum. So we've had standards-based curriculum around, definitely with written standards that our curriculum builds off of since, I would say, at least the 1990s, and they've gone through periods of changes and improvements. So back in the latter part of the last decade, around 2008, 2009, there was a movement. We had never had a push for a set of national standards that all, the hope was that all states would adhere to, and we could build an assessment off of and really kind of measure apples to apples when we're looking at how different educational programs are from state to state. So prior to that, every state essentially had its own set of standards, or and in some cases, the quality of those standards according to different groups who would assess them, varied. Rhode Island has, since that time, had its own set of standards. We, prior to the Common Core state standards, were working off of documents known as the grade span expectations. So this kind of work is not unfamiliar to us in the state and in Portsmouth. But what we've had since the adoption of the Common Core are these set of standards. There's separate standards for mathematics, and then ELA, English Language Arts, or literacy as it applies to all other subjects such as social studies and science. And this movement was to get again, the hope was all states, but as many states as possible, to adopt the Common Core so that we could provide a framework for, again, kind of this national set of standards that it would be easier to kind of measure the quality of education from state to state. So Rhode Island was one of the states that adopted the Common Core. Initially, I believe there were 45 of the 50 states did so, and there has been a little bit of fluctuation, but Rhode Island has held steady.
And it's my understanding that the Race to the Top committed to using Common
Correct.
Core state
So
standards as part of the
right. So that was one
award.
of the the big education initiative of the Obama administration has been Race to the Top, and we're kind of in the final stages of spending that allotment of money that states were granted. In Rhode Island's case, we received $75 million, which then went out to the various districts. But part of being eligible to receive apply for Race to the Top and receive those funds was that states had to commit to adopt the Common Core, and as that translated down to districts, if districts wanted to take part in the initiatives that were going to come through Race to the Top in Rhode Island, essentially districts also had to agree to adopt the Common Core. So that's how it's kind of trickled down.
So, and since you raised the fact that we were part of this Race to the Top, Common Core state standards, though, are there federal or state dollars that come to the administration, to the school district, that actually help pay for curriculum change, new textbooks, and all the lot?
Yeah, so I mean, the actual federal dollars that we receive at the local level are very limited. Most of money outside of our local appropriations that we receive would be state money. So far, for the past few years, again, we're in the final year of spending down any of the money that flowed down from Race to the Top. Most of the money to support the rollout of the new standards and curriculum work that districts had to do, most of that money has come from Race to the Top money.
But Race to the Top money in district has been nominal.
Right.
I mean, it's been like $100,000.
Right. Yeah, it hasn't been millions of dollars, and
for
certainly in Portsmouth.
And for the town of Portsmouth, we have had to invest in new curriculum, new technology.
Right. So we're supporting most of that
professional development
through our local funds.
Let's take a step back, because I think one of the things that I think Common Core, it's very misunderstood by the general public, and then you have groups that want to make Common Core something it's not. Mm-hmm. Common Core is not the health curriculum.
Right.
So if you could take a step back into math and ELA, and then how you use Common Core state standards to actually link science and social studies. Specifically, what is the standard? It's not a curriculum, correct?
Right, correct, Dave. So the curriculum and even the State Department of Education RIDE will say curriculum decisions are made at the local level, so we get to decide what our curriculum is in Portsmouth. But what the standards do is provide a framework for that curriculum. So our curriculum would build off of those standards. So in the case of the Common Core math standards, obviously most of our math curriculum is going to be based upon those standards, but the standards themselves are not the curriculum. We would then build off of that, build what's known as our scope and sequence, what would be taught at each grade level, how are we going to support that with resources and professional development. Again, those are all local decisions. There are some guiding documents that we can use and everything, but we do have the final say as to what the curriculum is going to look like. In the case of the ELA, English Language Arts standards, those address literacy, so that does permeate into a lot of different areas. So again, those standards would provide the framework for whatever our curriculum is going to be in English Language Arts, but also to a degree in math, in science, social studies, and other subjects.
So I want to have two follow-up questions.
Sure.
One relative to, so we control the curriculum. Mm-hmm. What is Portsmouth doing in district, and how are we actually doing professional development for our teachers and allowing our teachers to actually start planning, the scope of the adoption of Common Core state standards?
So what most districts will do is have what's known as a curriculum cycle. So that's some sort of timeline. Usually a typical cycle is about 5 years, in which curriculum will be reviewed and then changes will be made. Some cases it's minor tweaking of the curriculum, but in some cases it may be almost an entire rewrite. So depending on the subject, we're in various stages of that. So through that work, we would bring teachers together to help write the curriculum. That scope and sequence that I talked about is definitely the most important part, where we would want teacher input. So through that, as that new curriculum is rolling out, that's when we're looking to infuse the new resources. Obviously, in this day and age, a lot of it is around technology and how technology can support the curriculum. A lot of even what we do through textbooks, a lot more of that is going online in this day and age. And so then it's really looking at what the right professional development is in each area to help support teachers in presenting the curriculum to students.
As we look at the three levels within Portsmouth, whether it's elementary, our
Mm-hmm.
middle school or our high school, where does this impact the most?
Yeah, that's
this goes all the way to kindergarten.
Yeah, it does.
Right?
It does. The Common Core state standards are K-12, so I'm not sure if it impacts one particular level more than the other. I think all three levels are equally impacted as we move along. In some cases, like I said, we did have those grade span expectations, the prior standards in place in Rhode Island. They did get pretty high marks, when different national groups would even come in to review them. So for us, I don't see the Common Core state standards as a huge shift for us in what we were teaching. There are some changes that we would have to make with any new set of standards. I think for some other states, and where you've alluded to kind of this national movement, anti-Common Core movement is growing, I think part of that is because in some cases maybe it has been a bigger shift for some other states. And of course we do have kind of a history in our country of opposing anything that is going to be seen as this national what people assume is this national curriculum of saying what you have to do, and that's again wasn't the intention of the Common Core. It's providing those a common framework for that curriculum to build off of.
I know from being somewhat familiar with this that I think we've had parents come back and say it's going to inform the health curriculum, and it's just not the case.
Right.
But could you give an example, let's say in social studies, of how you would use the Common Core state standard in ELA to
Sure.
better, what would the difference be? A fictional text versus a nonfiction text.
Yeah.
One of the other concerns I've heard from parents is that the classics won't be embraced as they have in the past, and is that the case?
Not necessarily. Again, I think again, we do have certainly some control at the local level of how we're going to be kind of infusing that into our curriculum. But on the ELA side, I think some of the debate has been around the true literature pieces versus what's known as informational text, which is more the nonfiction. So that's where I think a lot of the opportunity lies in areas like social studies, where a piece of informational text or nonfiction could be documents or texts that you would normally use in the social studies class, which they were probably already using to inform a lot of their instruction as they work with students. So I think it's just building off of those pieces.
And you would actually use some of the Common Core state standard principles even in math. Is that correct? Where you would write out a problem set.
The literacy in math, absolutely.
And that's being done today, and teachers are better planning for the future?
Yes.
Obviously, as part of all this, we have assessments.
Right.
I want to touch on a couple of assessments because Common Core state standards is affecting all those. We were used to the NECAP, which is called the New England Common Assessment Program.
Yep.
And that will go away.
Right.
Are we still using the NECAP this year?
The only thing we are still using the NECAP for is science. So we are the state assessment, which we're getting ready to actually roll out. I can explain more about. Will be the assessment linked to the Common Core standards, which is the PARC assessment. So PARC stands for the Partnership for the Assessment of Readiness for College and Careers, and that's again what was really one of the impetuses behind the Common Core movement, was to be able to make sure that students were more college or career ready, and even the students going directly into the workforce, there's a certain skill level that they're going to need. So that's what the Common Core state standards are helping us to provide. So the PARC, the assessment that's going to be linked for them, will be the state assessment that we're now using in ELA and math. And so we're getting ready in Portsmouth, as all Rhode Island districts are, to roll that out this year as well.
Now, the NECAP was always a latent exam to subject matter the child had, or the student had studied prior to the break in the summer.
Right. So
how does the PARC, that assessment actually change now, and will it be a better barometer?
Absolutely, it should be a better barometer. That's one of the whole points as we've made this transition to the PARC, which will measure the knowledge of the Common Core standards, which the curriculum is built off of. One of the things that we have done is shift the time that the test will be given. So as you said, the kneecap exam used to be given in the fall, but it was actually based on the previous year's knowledge. And so there was always, a question of what knowledge students might have lost during the summer. They would come in September and kind of pick up with this new school year, but all of a sudden, here comes October, and we were then testing them on information that they would have learned the previous year. So
that really made that inside the classroom a little bit different.
Sure.
It really had to go back.
Right.
And reverse to go forward.
Yeah, and then when you received the results, it was always, I think, difficult for some people in the public to understand that really those results would have been measuring what the students should have learned the previous year. So with the park now, we'll have a later administration in the school year, and the park is definitely designed to be measuring what the student would have been learning that school year. We're actually going to have 2 administrations of the park. There's one administration that they consider kind of a mid-year check-in, which right now is scheduled in March. So that's coming up, and that time they may shift a little. And then there's an end-of-year park assessment, which will happen in May.
So give a sense for parents, what is the park assessment? How long does it take? Is my child, it is, and I'd like to get to
Sure.
the technology aspects in another question, but is this a multi-day event? Is this multiple hours?
It's multi-day because we're breaking up the sessions. So it does vary a little bit from grade level, and there's some information on our website for the Portsmouth School Department under the Teaching and Learning link. There's some park separate links there, links that speak to the Common Core in the park, and that would explain things a little more. The Rhode Island Department of Education also has a lot more links that people could go to for information. But essentially, it's either 2 or 3 sessions of the ELA. Math pretty much is just 2 sessions for every grade. Some grades for the ELA vary of whether they're having 2 or 3 sessions. I mean, the sessions themselves should take about an hour. So when we talk about it being a multiple-day event, it's really because we're breaking the sessions up. We don't want to have the kids sit for 3 straight hours of this, what could be an intense exam, especially as we're kind of rolling out, and it is going to be different from what they're used to in taking the kneecap. Park is designed. One of the catchphrases that they were using a lot when they were talking about the design of the park is it's designed to be a 21st century test. So it's going to take maybe a year or 2 for students to get used to some of the things that they have to do on the test that they may not have had to do certainly on the kneecap exam, which was paper and pencil, and we really didn't have a lot of other options. And with Park, the push is to really make it a completely computerized exam that the students are taking on a computer. We will be doing that in Portsmouth this year. Districts did have the option if they felt like they weren't ready to do that yet because of just available technology or infrastructure. There was a paper and pencil option for this year, but the RIDE was pretty clear that you needed to be moving towards being able to administer this 100% on computer. So we did make the decision to, we felt like we were ready to do that this year in Portsmouth. So this year in a lot of ways is going to be kind of a practice for everyone. RIDE has said that we're not going to be they're kind of putting their classification system, which they usually take from the test scores. In previous it had been kneecap. We're going to put that on hold for this year. That will start, come back and start again next year. But we'll be able to at least run through this session of Park this year, computerized in the district, and see how that goes for us.
The assessment itself, will we be reporting results out from this year, or is that going to be internal and reviewed as far as, or has that decision been made?
We are going to get results from this year. I think, again, at least based my understanding of what RIDE has said, is that those results won't be made public as they usually are. We'll get them at the district level. We'll be able to kind of see how students did and so forth. And then going into next year, that's when we'll administer the test. Again, their hope is that everybody's moved to the computerized version by that point, which we'll be at already in Portsmouth. And then starting next year, they'll start tying those results into the classification system again.
Now, just for parents and for residents, I mean, there is a process to this, right? Remember, we're changing, we're taking the standards, adapting curriculum, we're bringing it to the younger grades.
Right.
There's a process by which our assessment evolves, let's say.
Yep.
I mean, how is the school district looking at that kind of learning curve?
Sure.
I mean, are we giving ourselves 3 years to get from point A to point B?
Yeah, I would say that would be a good time frame. Definitely, within 3 years, we should be able to kind of start taking those results now, and we'll have gotten through a couple of administrations of it, and students will, again, as they work their way through the grades, be used to taking that kind of assessment. I think definitely in year one, it's going to be, we can't make any decisions off of the results, I would say. This first year is going to be a baseline. We won't be able to compare the results to how students did on the PARC. In the kneecap. It's just going to be a completely different kind of test. So we really have to kind of go in with the mindset of this year is going to be a baseline, and then in coming years, definitely by year 3, like you said, I would say we'd be ready to start making, the kinds of decisions that we're supposed to be able to make as a district. One of these, one of the points of a test like this too is that we can make decisions about our curriculum. If the test is based on the standards, if the curriculum is supposed to be built off of those standards, then when you get the results of a test like this, whether it be kneecap or PARC, it should inform the district of how our curriculum is teaching what it's supposed to be teaching.
Now, the kneecap was not Common Core state standards based. That'd be fair,
right?
It came out of No Child Left Behind and was more of a building assessment than an individual. The PARC is more aligned to a pure assessment for the child's knowledge base.
Right. Again, that kind of 21st century assessment. We should be able to make those curriculum decisions, but also get a lot of detailed information about how each student did on the exam as well.
Now, Portsmouth has been using tools, however, over the last couple of years, like Scantron, which some of those sheets in the past have come back to parents. And they've had to actually call their PhD friend down the street to try to analyze what the data was.
Right.
So we sort of have tested where we are in Common Core state standards over the last couple of years. Are you still using Scantron, and are we still using?
We are currently. We have so Scantron is middle and high school, and we have another similar assessment, to kind of get the same kind of information called M-Class that we use at our 2 elementary schools. We are looking right now at there are a lot of different versions of these kinds of tests,
Sure.
and the benefit would be to go to one that's, definitely more directly linked to the Common Core and PARC. So I think we'll still have those kind of benchmark assessments in place in the future, but they may look a little different as well.
So the state had a fire drill last spring on kneecap and graduation requirements, and I can happily say that my 2 daughters, who are 5 years apart, were the year for the graduation requirement for 11th grade students, and then the new graduation requirement for PARC. Obviously, kneecap was discontinued as a graduation requirement last spring. There is no present graduation requirement assessment for graduation in the state of Rhode Island.
There is not. Essentially, one of the things the General Assembly did at the end of their session last year was pass a bill that put a moratorium on the use of using state assessments for graduation requirements. Eventually, the thinking is we would probably be doing that with PARC. And right now what we're seeing is at one point there was a push to have that be 2020 at the earliest. Now there is some talk about possibly 2017, which would still give us a few years to have a few administrations of it. So that decision needs to be finalized, but I would assume at some point we will see that requirement come back, and again, in this case it would be for the park exam.
Now, there's been a lot of, at least, news about parents wanting to opt out of assessments. Is that a possibility here in Rhode Island, or?
So yeah, that is that kind of movement. Like I said, that anti-Common Core. I think it's building off of that, and so we have received a few inquiries, as many districts have so far. What the state of Rhode Island is telling us, and this is one of the things that does vary from state to state. Rhode Island does not have any provision that allows students or parents to opt their students out of parks. So that doesn't exist in our state. Right now, essentially, that we're being able to make a local decision on that for this year. Again, I would expect the conversation, though, to continue at the state level. Right now, one of the recommendations is that perhaps districts build in their own internal policies around this. I think we didn't see as much of this with NECAP, so it's one of the things that has kind of, we don't have the policies in place either at the state or local level right now to address, that kind of, decision that parents are asking us to support them in making.
So we've talked about the park assessment, but any high schooler will be very informed about the PSAT, the SAT,
right,
and the advanced placement exams. They too are evolving.
Right.
Can you touch upon
Sure.
just the really significant changes that we're
Sure.
going to see this year or next year?
I think they're starting to roll out, for the SATs perhaps this year, but as you referenced, I think, and that's one of the things I think that is not gaining as much attention, is that, okay, there's this kind of anti-Common Core park movement, but tests that we're used to our high school students taking, like PSAT, SAT, those are all changing as well to adopt more of the same principles built off of the Common Core. So they'll probably look a lot more similar to the park exam in the coming years.
So in the minute we have remaining, and I appreciate this. This has been, I think we could probably go on for hours and talk about more specifics of Common Core. Things aren't going to change, right? Our child is only going to be probably better prepared for each step along their educational pathway.
Right, I would say absolutely. As I said, we've had standards-based curriculum for many years. This is at some point we would have been changing our standards, revising and changing our standards anyway. We've done that based on the Common Core, again, which most of the states in our nation have done. Parents, students shouldn't see these drastic changes, as you said, and although we'll have this new assessment known as the PARC, there's no way around students having to take assessments to measure what they should have learned. They're doing that probably on a weekly basis in their classes. They're going to do that on a much higher level with things like the SAT or AP exams, as you referenced. So this should only help prepare them for that.
I want to thank Tom for joining us. This is a topic that we probably should readdress over the course of time. Thank you, and thank you for joining us at Portsmouth This Week.
Thank you.